First of all, thank you very much to Archcode Almaty for giving us the opportunity of being here tonight. And thank you all, and sorry for not speaking Russian. Our fault. So we will start talking about what we are and what we are not. We are not architects. I know that a lot of you are architects here. We actually started to make photos and to explore cities from the other way around. From when the architects are dead, we started to explore abandoned places. While the architects usually think about architecture even before the architecture exists. So in some way we approach to architecture in the same way that Giovanni Battista Piranesi did in the 18th century in Italy with his engravings of ruins all over the ruins of ancient Rome. So we started with an emotional approach, a kind of poetic approach, as you can see from this picture of Villa Adriana. And this, for example, a photo we did in an abandoned factory in Italy of the 19th century. So with a very similar approach, with nature getting in and with a kind of melancholy feeling. This is another example of a very similar architecture shot with a very similar way. It's a rural building in southern Italy. So we started to make photos of the building around us. We come from Milan, a former industrial city. So we started to explore the factories around Milan. And we found suddenly that the role of photography can also be the one of documenting buildings, because often buildings are just demolished. This building, this structure in particular, was demolished a few years after our exploration. This is another example of the same building. This structure is still there, but they totally removed the roof. And this is how it used to be. It was a very important factory producing cars and motorcycles, and was really also important for the industrial history of Milan. And now there's basically nothing more than ruins or photographies. There are a lot of examples of building there, not anymore. This is particularly intense because this was a villa in the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland that was sadly demolished a couple of years after our exploration. This is how it used to be, and this is what happened a few years after, even if it was a really important place from an historical point of view, from an artistic point of view. Another example, was a factory near Venice, and they used to produce aluminium. And in the photo, it was like the satellite image at the top. Now it's like in the bottom part here, that is now basically in a harbor for the tourists arriving to Venice. So of these industrial past, there's nothing anymore. So now we will just show you some few photos of buildings where the nature is basically claiming back the space after the abandoned phase. So where we get inside this place, we don't know what will happen, if there will be demolished, if they will be renovated, or will just live like this to the work of nature itself. This in particular was a sugar mill in central Italy. This was a private villa near Bologna, but it's really poetic, I will say, the fact that the nature is getting back in the place from the window, and there is this kind of comparison between the real plant and the plant portrayed in the fresco in the wall. And this is even more that there's a kind of invasion of the nature, because this was a villa of the 17th century, if I'm not wrong, or 18. And as you can see, there's even a tree that's in the middle of the building. But not always the buildings, the abandoned buildings are going to be destroyed. This is an historical photo of a summer camp built in the 30s in Italy, so under the fascist regime, in the region of Genoa. This is how it used to look in the 30s. This is how it looked in 2015, so it was completely abandoned since a lot of years, and the fate was still basically unknown. Luckily, it was renovated recently in a quite a respectful way, so this is how it appears nowadays. So our photo is this one. In this case, the photos is really a document of a phase of the life of the building itself. Unfortunately, not always the buildings are renovated in a kind of respectful way. This is an historical photo of a former Wehrmacht base in Berlin, so the base of the Nazi army. After that, it was occupied by the Red Army and the KGB in East Germany. And here how it used to look in 2009. After being used by two totalitarianism, they just added balconies to the military base, and it now look like this. So there's really people that is growing up their children in the same rooms that were used by the Nazi and by the KGB, questioning people. And so the topic, the whole topic of the renovation is a thing that involves also photography from this point of view.
Still in Germany, near Berlin, there is this other abandoned military base. This one also used by the Nazi forces and then by the Russians. We'll show you the map because it's very important for us to create very detailed plans when we travel for our photographic trips. In this case, we try to know a place where to enter at the point A. We're not sure, we try. And the other points are our targets, are the most interesting building for us to explore. So this is how we see it from the satellite views. And this is how we see it when we arrive at the place, when we discover the place. So this is the path to the entrance of the military base. This is another entrance with the Red Army symbols. And this one, when we enter, when we see the interior of the place, it's kind of finding hidden treasures in these abandoned buildings, still well conserved. When we plan our trips, we use different sources. For example, books and magazines are really important, and architectural websites of any kind. In this case, for our work of the research in the town of Almaty, it's been really useful, the website of Archcode, which is it's a really detailed database of Soviet modernist buildings. Another way to find interesting buildings is the research by architects. So if we find an interesting building, we can see which other buildings have been designed by the same architect in the same city. Also search engines, for example Google, and not just the results of Google, but also the related results of the pictures we find. Photographic social networks are also really important for us. For example, Pinterest and Flickr, but also on Facebook and Instagram, we can find several stuff to explore. If we find a picture of a building, but we can find information about it, we can use the reverse search of Google, so we can upload a photo, and Google will tell us, if possible, which building is it, where it's located, who is the architect, the information about the building. Last one, but one of the most important source is the satellite views. So we use Google Maps, Bing Maps, but also other ones. So we can find the exact location of a certain building, but we can also find other buildings we haven't found before. So we can find a particular shape, we can save the location and check it out when we arrive at the place. So there is a lot of work behind our work as photographers, and it's planning a kind of missions for us when we start for our traveling trips.
So this is, for example, just an example of how we proceed. Let's make the example that we want to make photos of the Castello Sforzesco in Milan. So we locate it on the map and we find out the coordinates. So we put together a lot of information in a single maps of related to all the trips we want to do. Like for example, this is the map of Yerevan, the capital city of Armenia. This is very important for us because we get familiar with the urban context of the city we are going to explore even before being there. So we already kind of know where to go, and in this case in particular, we already realized that, for example, the industrial part of the city was located in the southern districts. So looking at the satellite picture, I've located these 10 cooling towers that seemed interesting to me from when I was preparing the trip. So when I got there, I found this. So I already knew more, even if I have not seen photos of it yet. It was a way to explore furtherly the city like this. Another important thing, of course, is not just locating the building, but it's finding a point of view, a proper point of view, in order to make photos of it. This is, in this case, I wanted to make photos of these 4 buildings. This is Novi Beograd, the new part of Belgrade, built in the second part of the 20th century. So exploring the area, this is just a Google Art picture to explain. I found this little hill with a railway on it, and I climbed it basically to make the photo that I will show later. This is this one. So this photo was done from this point of view, let's say. Another very important thing for us is to try to calculate as much as possible the light, the sun, the position of the sun. This is just an example with the position of this. This is the Dynamo Sport Complex in Yekaterinburg, a constructivist building of the 20s. And you can see this part is heading southeast, while this part is more heading northwest. So it's basically, if we find a sunny day, it's not possible to properly shoot them in one single part of the day. It was done in the morning. As you can see, the sun is coming from here. There's even people making yoga. Well, the northern part was done in the afternoon. This thing was studied before of moving in a particular part of the day. Another example that is, so we started talking a bit with the Soviet modernist buildings, is the former Ministry of Highway Construction of Georgia in Tbilisi. It was inspired probably by the horizontal skyscrapers by Lisiski, by the contemporary metabolism, and it probably inspired the interlace by Oma in Singapore. Okay, this part, as you can see, is basically hanging on a hill towards east. So this part is facing east, while the upper part is facing the west. So to shoot this part, I went there in the morning, and this was the view basically from the other part of the river. As you can see, the river here, so it lies here. And to make the back part of the building, I had to come back in the afternoon from up of the hill. Of course, we don't just decide the morning or afternoon, but we're using professional apps. We try to understand what is the best position of the sun in the period of the year that we need, in order to study beforehand the most useful time range of the day to go there and make photos. And this is how we made basically our target maps for Almaty. So we looked a lot of information with the Archcode Almaty website, other sources. We put the pinpoints together and we make the light study for each point of it. So it's really time consuming. You have to multiplicate it with other cities. So it's, of course, sometimes making photos, it takes less time than preparing the whole trip, let's say. So after several years making photos of abandoned places, of architecture, so we were attracted progressively to the Soviet modernism, and we started sometimes individually, sometimes together, to explore the former Soviet Union to find these Soviet modernist buildings. So now we are going to show you some photos of Soviet modernist buildings from all the republics we've seen so far. This is, for example, the very, very interesting museum in Volgograd. It's the Museum of the Battle of Stalingrad. This is the TASS building in Moscow. Probably most of you know it. It's the news agency building. It's quite interesting for me. This is a building in Togliatti. I will show a couple of other buildings there. Togliatti is a very interesting city from this point of view. This is the local palace of culture, with all this interesting way of layers of the structure. Probably you'll have a kind of deja vu looking at this building. I had it too, actually. It was built 10 years after your Lenin Palace, and it was probably strongly influenced by it from the roof, from all the part of the buildings. Unfortunately, you don't have any more the original. It's in Ufa. And this is the former Lenin Memorial in Samara, former Kuyshov. It's now a museum. This is a view of the Children's Music Theater in Moscow that is not so far from the Lomonosov University. We are back again in Togliatti, and this is the view of Cinema Saturn, a design that was replicated in other cities in the former Soviet Union. Circus were a really important kind of buildings in the former Soviet Union. As you know, you have a very interesting one here in Almaty. It is the circus again in Moscow, not far from in Saturn districts, not far from the Lomonosov University. And this is the circuit in Chelyabinsk, with the upper part, just the upper part, quite similar to the ones we have seen in Bishkek and Dushanbe. Sometimes abandoned places, we stumble again upon abandoned places. This is a part of the Belgorodok clinic in Togliatti that is lying abandoned, but it's really interesting. This is in Prospect Mira in Moscow, and it's really really interesting way of the facade. How the facade was designed, and it's nice also to play with shadows in that part of the day. We finished the selection of the Russian photos with this building again in Samara, Kuyshov, was done by the architect Rebecca Conte. It's quite particular the way it was. The balconies are shaped.
This is the Cinema Oktября in Minsk, with this curved facade and white color. And in Minsk there are several interesting modernist buildings. Like this one, it's an housing complex. It's called Kukuruzka. And it's made by 5 towers. The last one was behind me, and they are really different from the average Soviet blocks in Minsk. Another interesting side of our work is to show how the context where the buildings are located changed during the years. For example, this is the House of Fashion in Minsk, and there is that strange contrast between the huge and grey bas relief and the Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant in the lower side. We saw a similar view in Almaty for the Cinema Arman with the Burger King writings on the lower side. This is Cinema Moskva, still in Minsk. And still in Minsk, this is the pavilion for exhibition. It's called Bell Expo. It was built at the beginning of the 80s. This is the Faculty of Architecture and Construction in Minsk. The original plan was to build other 3 smaller buildings like this, but in the end it was just one. Let's move to another city in Belarus, a smaller one. It's called Bobruisk. This is a residential building nicknamed Birdhouse. It has been rebuilt because it has been repainted because the original color was just grey concrete. Still in Bobruisk, this is Hotel Yubileyная. You can see this beautiful repetition of balconies creating an amazing pattern. And this one is in Bobruisk too. It's the Palace of Arts. This is a huge sculpture made of glass, or colored glass, and it represents Icarus. This is another Cinema Oktября, but in the city of Baranvici. This is a quite less known building, but I think it's quite amazing with this three-dimensional metal pattern on the facade. This is a really gigantic concrete sculpture in Brest, in the memorial complex Hero Fortress. And this is the entrance of the memorial complex. It's basically the Soviet star. It's Soviet star shaped.
So now we finally go to Georgia. And so this is the archaeological museum that was basically never finished, yet it has a very interesting kind of circular plan. It basically lies abandoned. Basically abandoned is also this library of the Tbilisi State University. This is the interior of the same building, and the stairs, very interesting stairs in the internal courtyard. This is another building that is basically laying on a hill with very interesting layers. It's still hosting offices. This is a technical library that is quite famous, let's say, among all the brutalist lovers all over the world. And this building, it's in Gori, the city of Stalin. It used to be a cultural palace for the workers of a local factory. This is a technical building related to the railway of Tbilisi. Sometimes, of course, we follow our maps, but of course we keep our eyes open. Sometimes we find buildings that we didn't expect to find for several reasons, like this one with this very interesting concrete patterns outside the windows. It is in the center of Tbilisi, but we don't know anything about this building. Another abandoned building, they have a lot in Tbilisi, unfortunately, is this cable car station, which is really, I would say, almost expressionist stairs outside. And as in many other former Soviet republics, there were palace of ceremonies, palace of rituals, and this is the former palace of rituals of Tbilisi that is now owned by a private man, a rich private man.
So let's stay in the Caucasus with the country of Armenia. The very special thing about modernist building in Armenia is the use of red tuff. This is, for example, the Komitas Chamber Music House. It's a concert hall in Yerevan. As photographers, we often love to play with water reflection to create a geometrical composition and to capture basically the beauty of the buildings in a different way. The Yerita Sardakan metro station, with this very particular structure, circular structure coming out from the building. And this is the back of the building. I prefer this side, sincerely. This is an amazing building, very impressive building. It's the former Cinema Russia. Now it's completely abandoned. They made a kind of bazaar in the lower side. It's a kind of symbol in Yerevan. This is a chess house. It was named after Tigran Petrosyan, the very famous Armenian chess player. Let's go outside Yerevan. This is a part of a former bus station, but this is basically the tourist shop, it's called. It's tourist shop, and now it's abandoned. And it's amazing because of these wings of concrete coming out of the building. This is one of my favorite spots in Armenia. It's on Lake Sevan. It's a viewing platform, so it's just a building where you go up and just stare at the beautiful landscape of the lake. It looks almost like a huge fossil to me. This is a canteen. It's the canteen of the House of Recreation for Writers of Armenia. The special thing is that it looks like it's floating because it stands just on one pillar, and it's on a mountain, on the rocks of a mountain. This is the railway station of the city of Gyumri. Here we can see another sample of red tuff used for the building. A part of the beautiful relief on the facade. From the satellite views, I was attracted by that shape on the roof of the building. And when I entered the building, I found this fantastic ceiling, the beautiful combination between tuff and concrete, just like a concrete flower. This is a very impressive abandoned fountain still in the city of Gyumri. It was once part of the Polytechnic University of Gyumri, but in 1988 a huge earthquake destroyed huge parts of the cities, but the fountain is still standing. This is the trampoline of a huge abandoned pool in the city of Echmiadzin, near Yerevan. And this is the monument of the Battle of Bashaparan. It's in the city of Aparan, and it's basically part of the landscape. So let's move to Moldova. This is a residential building. It's called Ramanica, also Ramashka. Basically, it's a residential tower made of precast concrete modules, and on the top there would be constructed a restaurant, but unfortunately it was never finished. This is the Railway Workers' Palace of Culture. The interesting thing is that beautiful colonnade, those beautiful columns holding the corridor. This is the concrete pattern of the Parliament parking in Chisinau. This is an abandoned cable car station on the top of a hill still in Chisinau. It was built at the beginning of the 80s and abandoned just 2 or 3 years later. And this is still in Chisinau. It's a residential complex. Here we entered inside one of the residential buildings to have a better view of the nearby.
They also have the circus, which is now, of course, quite different from the others we've seen. And it was abandoned for a while, and it's recently being used again. There's plenty of patterns in that city. This is quite particular in a fashion house, so it's commercial, with this very particular iron pattern. A more traditional concrete pattern in an office building, and a concrete pattern in a residential building. And this is, I would say, a landmark of the city. This is a Hotel Cosmos with this very particular shaped balconies from this side, and it's really located in a very visible position in the center of the city. So we finished the selection of the photos of Soviet modernism we wanted to show you. We finished, I think, this Archcode. I don't know if it's the right pronunciation. So, this is